Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a video regarding Sony's latest announcement of their brand new full-frame interchangeable lens cameras, the A7 and A7R. Now these are branded as alpha cameras. No more will we see NEX cameras, but this doesn't mean the death of the NEX lineup, merely a rebranding. So I want all of you current NEX users to know that right now. This is yet another camera that Sony is bringing out really in response to what they have found customers are looking for, much like the also announced RX10, which I'll be covering in another video. But for now, I want to focus on this brand new A7 and A7R. So I've got some high-res images here, basically just to go over features. Clearly, I don't have it on hand as of yet. The camera is going to launch in December. The A7 is a 24 megapixel full frame camera, not that much larger than the NEX7, very similar in body style to the RX1, and really will afford a great amount of versatility for both enthusiasts and professionals. Of course, the A7R is more oriented or focused on pros, but in terms of pricing, the kit you're looking at here right now will run roughly $2,000 at launch in December. Body only on this 24 megapixel full frame interchangeable lens camera is going to be roughly $1,700. If you want to jump up to the R version, which has a 36 megapixel sensor, among many other features that just really make it the true boss of detail when we're talking about full frame in general, but also in this form factor, because the pass filter has been removed. Of course, that is a double-edged sword. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that camera is going to be $2,300 body only. So what you may have noticed already from these images is that, again, compact form factor, even though now Sony has taken on full-frame lens capability for a body that really resembles a Frankenstein or love child of the NEX and RX1 line. And I'll be showing you that with actual cameras a little bit later, but this is the kit lens package for $2,000. In fact, I think it'll be the most popular option for obvious reasons, because when you compare it to something like the flagship NEX7, which originally retailed for $1,350 as a kit, this is a relative bargain. Also, when you compare it to the balance of the competition and their offerings, once again, the A7 is a bargain. Now, the A7 also has faster autofocus than the A7R because it does have phase detection beyond contrast on the sensor, something those of you interested in that faster focusing do need to be aware of. So definitely more of the consumer-friendly enthusiast camera. Again, the 7R targeting professionals. But some people will make an argument that these cameras won't necessarily appeal to professionals. I personally disagree. Much like the NEX brand, this camera, the A7 as well as A7R, can use a wide variety of different lenses, legacy glass with adapters. So even though this camera line is going to launch with only 3 lenses in December, which I'll be talking about as well through the course of this video, you can pick up adapters and pretty much go wild as long as you're willing to work manually. And anybody in this price range pretty much should be willing to work manually, in my opinion. So in terms of body and specifications, things I want to go over through the course of this, again, focusing on the A7, you can see we've got an overhead view right now of the top of the camera. And the first thing you'll notice is that we've got a very similar layout and design, including the actual bodies being made of the exact same materials pretty much found in the CyberShot RX1, the first full-frame camera from Sony, mirrorless, with a fixed lens though, of course not interchangeable like this. And everything looks almost identical. Key differences: better ergonomics. We've got a grip now which pretty much is almost identical to what you'd find in the NEX6 or NEX7, which I'll be showing you in a moment as well. And then now we've got a completely different viewfinder from what at least Sony's been leaning on in the past. This takes us back to the A900 days. It's a center-mounted electronic viewfinder, OLED, the exact same one found in the A99, which is already an aged camera, but still top of the line. And Sony won't be updating that as part of course, the traditional A mount until sometime in 2014, at least to my knowledge. But this, in my opinion, is a major improvement. I personally was not a big fan of the left-mounted viewfinders on NEX cameras. Granted, this is now a full-frame camera, but I much prefer it in the center. Some people aren't in love with the overall aesthetic of this actual camera right now, but personally, I think the balance of the RX1 body paired with the ergonomics of the NEX 6 or 7, and then a top-mounted viewfinder, which, as I mentioned, does remind me of the A900, but also keep in mind Sony has acquired a large portion of Olympus, so OMD-esque viewfinder, no question about it. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of that ownership now, being able to throw this on top, but I'm not really sure of that. Now, coming to the back of the model, you can see we've got more dials than we did with the RX1, and that's because, again, this is an interchangeable lens camera system. It isn't focused on one fixed lens experience, and far more customization is expected because this is another level of camera. It's not a cyber shot. It is an alpha as part of the new branding. But basically, the point here is beyond the traditional buttons and dials that you already know and probably recognize from previous generations, NEX or RX1 alike, we now have added ones so that you can really assign just about any control you want, so that whether you want to instantly have control of ISO, aperture, exposure compensation, all of those things are really at your fingertips. Something that was always a giant critique of very small form factor cameras like the NEX models. Also, the software on this brand new A7 and A7R lineup revamped. This is not the NEX interface. It is far more favored to what we are accustomed to with the RX1 and RX100 and Mark II. Likely that is the same interface, a very similar one that we'll be seeing with the RX10 as well. Of course, we've got a tilting screen. This isn't a new thing, but if you own an RX1, that's something you probably wish you had. Of course, you probably also wish you had the OLED viewfinder. So overall, a really nice feature set. The only thing that I'm kind of boggled by is the placement of the record button. Also in demonstrations that I've seen so far, the shutter sound seems a little bit above and beyond what Sony really needed to do. Of course, I can't speak from a technical standpoint, but considering the RX1, I know it's a different system, has that leaf shutter that's completely silent. I can't help but wish that that was something they brought on board with this brand new lineup, because this camera really does represent Sony's entire evolution of their digital imaging and photographic oriented business, whether we're talking about just traditional still or the Handycam line, because really with all of the options on here, that multi-interface shoe, which I forgot to mention up top, pretty important, again, standardized. You can throw an XLR adapter on there so that you can get much higher quality audio, even though this camera does incorporate a line in for audio as well as out for monitoring with headphones. Still, to have that shoe, since Sony has really fleshed out a very deep lineup of accessories, is yet another nicety that really represents how the A7 and A7R really do embody all of the years of Sony's, at least in my opinion, revolutionary work within the industry, which started with the induction really, or I should say the perfection of the NEX 5N. When Sony turned that camera into the beast that it represented in its form factor for an APS-C size sensor-based camera, of course, mirrorless interchangeable lens system, and then also eventually built out a very solid line of E-mount lenses, it was clearly logical with the success of the RX1 to marry the two concepts. And that's what we've got here. So really the best of both worlds. Is it a perfect camera? Clearly not everyone is going to be satisfied, but I think this is going to be one of those cameras that sets new standards and redefines expectations for all manufacturers. And that's why Sony has done this. Also, things did get more expensive. I mentioned before the NEX7, a $1,350 kit. Now we're looking at a $2,000 kit, but the capability set is just not even remotely comparable. Of course, if you're wondering whether or not you need to upgrade to a camera like this, that's more of a question of, are you satisfied by what you currently have, in my opinion. That should always be the question as to whether you're going to upgrade your current equipment. What are you not able to accomplish that you'd like to be? So for those of you who are looking for a full frame experience interchangeable lens system that really didn't or won't break the bank and is still in a very compact form factor, only slightly larger than the NEX line, Sony has done it, and I really give them a lot of credit. I didn't necessarily expect it to come out in this form factor. I expected, frankly, even higher prices, but it makes sense when you compare it to the bar set by the RX1, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. So I wanted to just, again, show specifications. And right here you can see, just from the Amazon details page, world's lightest interchangeable lens full-frame camera. That's clearly one of the biggest bragging rights. Full-frame 24.3 megapixel sensor with 14-bit RAW recording. Clean HDMI out, by the way, on these cameras as well. Not that that wouldn't be expected. And then that fast hybrid autofocus with phase detection that I was talking about before, which is really important because speed is not a strong suit of the RX1. This camera isn't incredibly faster, but it definitely is going to best it in the speed department. Now, in terms of the A7R, again, just base specifications, features, and details here. Really basic. You can see, again, boasting the same fact about its weight because it's the exact same size. Build quality is slightly different, by the way, which, quite frankly, it should be. The price difference isn't only about the fact that you're getting a different sensor, but you're also, or I should say a sensor with more megapixels, but also you're getting a slightly sturdier build. Both cameras completely weatherproofed. I should have mentioned that before. That's another critical feature. In fact, everything that I've mentioned thus far is pretty much a reaction or response to user feedback. Much like the RX 100 Mark II that I reviewed recently, this has been a recurring theme with Sony lately. They are actually listening to customers, and that's a critical feature or element of success in any field, but especially one like this where people are looking to find the perfect solution for their specific needs. So Sony answering a lot of your desires, needs in this brand new A7 and A7R. But this the R is missing that faster phase detection autofocus. Both are roughly capable. I believe the A7 of 5 frames continuous shooting per second, whereas we're looking at a little bit less with the higher resolution 7R. Now, in terms of glass, and that's the next thing I want to talk about because that's the next important element, what is this actually going to launch with? Well, you're looking at the 3 launch pieces of glass, or excuse me, the Zeiss 24 to 70 is, I'm not sure that it is, or no, it is launching simultaneously. No, actually, maybe February. Stand corrected. Those of you who know, feel free to post in comments. But what I do know, of course, is that the kit lens will be out at launch. So if you want the kit lens, even though it clearly isn't the fastest lens, it is kit glass. I expect it to be a solid performer, much like all of Sony's E-mount kit glass in the past. Some of the best kit glass money can buy. If not, you have 2 other solid options. You've got the Zeiss 35mm. Now, this is an f2.8 lens priced at $800, which is, I would say, a good price for what should be a great lens for street photography. And then you've got the also yet another piece of Zeiss glass, Sony clearly leveraging that branding here at $1,000, a 55mm f1.8. So those are going to be 2 of the more popular lenses. Personally, the one that I have the most interest in, though, is the 24 to 70 Zeiss. That is an f4 constant, which is $1,200, definitely the priciest of the launch lenses, and do expect that these lenses will carry heftier price tags than traditional E-mount lenses designed for NEX cameras. Now, for those of you who want to purchase a body only, of course you can work with legacy glass or with lenses like we've been working with right now in Sony's NEX current traditional E-mount lineup. The only thing is that if you use something like the Power Zoom, the SLP 18-200 that I just pulled out there, you are going to be using it in a cropped mode because it simply isn't designed for a full frame sensor. If you shoot it in the traditional full frame mode, you're going to get a cropped image. If you shoot it in the crop mode, you'll get a 16 megapixel image from the A7 because it's downsized from the 24, and I believe you're going to get something around 20 from the, I stand corrected, it could be a little bit higher, or no, it actually may be 18 megapixels from the 36 megapixel based A7R. So that should give you an idea of what the E-mount glass can do. I do expect the older E-mount glass that many of us already own and are heavily vested in, much like myself, to be satisfied with performance. But obviously, if you're going to invest $1,700 in this body or $2,000 in the kit just to get started, eventually pick up a vertical grip, something that we could never purchase for the NEX lineup. In fact, it really didn't make sense because they were so compact. Why would you want to bulk them up? That's where now we've got a whole new lineup of cameras to fill that gap in between the A-mount series and the NEX. So the NEX lineup isn't dead. Do expect to see alpha branded models that will very much resemble current NEX cameras, in my opinion. Sony is not cutting out the segment that they've been successful with, that the NEX 5, 5N, 5R, 5T, 6, and 7 all represent. They've merely come out with a product that bridges the gap between those giant beasts that we've always had to depend on for full frame capability to this brand new revolution of micro four thirds and NEX capability that Sony has in many ways pioneered, especially because of the RX1, which clearly blazed the trail for this brand new lineup, in my opinion. There's no question that the NEX 7 was where things all started in terms of really offering a camera in a mirrorless form factor that could adapt to all forms of legacy glass and please not only enthusiasts but professionals in many ways. I'm not saying that it would become their number one or even necessarily number two camera, but it certainly could fit into their gear bag because of its flexibility. Now we've got a camera that arguably, I won't say will become the number one in their bag, but certainly it's going to blur the line, and that's what Sony has continued to do, and now we've got that in the A7 and A7R. Again, in terms of pricing, very, very good, in my opinion, when compared to the competition. No one else is offering anything like this, and even though I expect this to sell out, I don't expect any manufacturers to be matching this anytime soon. For those of you who have not been following Sony's cameras and what they've been doing, despite all of their success and redefining much of what we've come to expect from the digital SLR market, competitors simply haven't been answering the call. Certainly, Fuji has made leaps and bounds from their previous models. They have some best-in-class cameras when it comes to APS-C sensors, but nothing with full frame, and their video capabilities do not stack up to what I've been talking about here in these brand new models. Of course, 1080p, 60p, 24p out of both of those cameras. And I also want to point out, because I didn't mention, don't be confused, it is not the same 24 megapixel full frame sensor found in the RX1. You are getting a new Bionz X processor. It is also rear illuminated. It seems that Sony is latching onto that in order to get the best low light performance that they can possibly offer. So that makes sense. In terms of other features, I'm looking here. I should have been on the full site to begin with, but I wanted nice clear images for all of you, and you can see the pricing there. $2,300 for that body. Certainly pricey, but when you think about what you'd have to spend with Nikon, it starts to really become a value, especially again because of that flexibility. And I mean in every single way. It used to be form factor meant limitation. It no longer really does. This is where NEX cameras came up short for professionals. And that's why they did start to incorporate multi-interface shoes, but that certainly wasn't enough. Full frame was the standard that most were expecting. But overall, really excited about both of these cameras. Now, whether or not it means you need to upgrade personally, I already mentioned, it really comes down to, are you able to satisfy your needs with your current equipment? If your NEX6 with SEL 18-200 or Zeiss 24 prime lens or whatever you may have, because the collection of E-mount glass has really grown quite nicely, then you probably don't need to upgrade. I mean, we've got Wi-Fi and NFC on cameras like the 5T. Of course, the NEX6 that I just picked up only has Wi-Fi, but it still has access to the Play Memory applications, as well as Wi-Fi control, especially the brand new update to the app, which I featured not too long ago, which are all themes built in, by the way, into the A7 and A7R. I didn't mention that, but both cameras do now pack those features. I mean, they are really, again, representations, the epitome of everything Sony has been investing in when it comes to all of their cameras. I'll even include and throw in the VG line because it is now a bona fide video camera. I do not expect overheating issues from the brand new A7 and A7R, something that, of course, plagued NEX models and improved over the generations, but never really allowed them to be, or at least used to their full video potential. That's not to say you can't get great video out of them. You certainly can, best in class. But now, with a camera like this, I think it's going to allow for still and video capabilities that are unprecedented in their form factor, much like the NEX and RX1 did in their own right. But this is really bridging the gap. So expensive, yes, but in relation to competition, a relative bargain. I mean, the Olympus OMD EM1 right there that you can't see, I'll zoom in. I mean, $1,400 for a body. Here, $1,700 is buying you a full-frame beast of a camera with so much more to offer. The only thing, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that disturbed me with these cameras right now is really the lack of launch glass. But again, Sony's leaning on the fact that you can use Legacy with adapters, as I have mentioned already, as well as the entire lineup of E-mount lenses. So current NEX users, don't feel that you've been thrown under the bus. There will be models that will still use your NEX E-mount glass that you've been using to its full potential. I believe there will be successors to the 6 and 7. It's just not right now in the current lineup, and that's because, quite frankly, Sony has done quite well with all of their current offerings. That's part of the reason they haven't really reinvented any of their cameras up until now with this brand new launch of the A7 and A7R. Now, in terms of the design, which I was talking about before, I wanted to show that side by side with the RX1 as I bumped the tripod there. You can see clearly they have adapted much of the exact same body. In fact, I will go back to the mobile site just to pull up those images again. And you will see side by side, I'm going to bring this in tighter, that literally the body is a clone of the RX1. And it really does make sense because, after all, this was the first full-frame compact mirrorless camera. So it really does almost identically mirror the form factor, except now we've got an extension on the grip, which seems to clearly be borrowed from the NEX6. As you can see, that grip right there, the protruding grip, the same exact texture. I'm trying to get the lighting proper there. There we go. And you can clearly see, again, that is directly borrowed from the NEX6 and 7. That was one of the best features of the 6 and 7, besides the fact that the 7 did have some peel problems with the grip. But the fact that it was it was just a pleasure to handle. It was a very easy to use camera when it came to handling. Of course, when you've got large lenses like the 18-200s on it, it's another story altogether. But the brand new A7 and A7R are larger cameras, so larger lenses like the SEL 18-200 original silver one that I've reviewed, as well as the power zoom one that you just saw, are going to be more at home on this, even though they can't take full advantage of that full frame sensor. So don't worry, all of your E-mount glass is still going to work here. In fact, that should get you by until the right glass comes out for you. The roadmap is deep. They have a lot of lenses slated for 2014. So in theory, by the end of 2014, you should be able to fulfill just about every need with the A7 and 7R. The only thing I didn't see a lot of was ultra-wide angle. So if that's your thing, you may want to hold on to your SCL 10 to 18 lenses or stick to legacy glass. But overall, it really does just outright resemble, again, stick with the RX1, and we've got a mirror image, essentially, when you look at that side by side. In terms of the actual buttons, layout, it is scary how close this camera is. Of course, the RX1 has not only a fixed lens, but also a fixed LCD screen, so that flexibility is lost. But otherwise, everything is there. I also want to take us back to the top side view, which I lost because we're looking at the actual body only. So let's look at that again. And you'll see the evidence yet again. Take a look at that. Button layout. I showed you the back before where we've got virtually all the exact same dials. And now on the top, yet again, same exact theme. You know, the layout is identical. The only difference you can really see is that the shutter release button is different. We got a cable release versus a solid silver release button. Of course, the grip is different, but the only thing we're really missing here is that the hot shoe is not sitting on top of that viewfinder that pretty much every RX1 owner out there wishes it had built in. Of course, that's a pricey accessory, but the RX1 is not for the faint of heart when it comes to pricing. Keep in mind the RX1 is still far more compact than this camera, and many will argue that the pairing of that Zeiss 35mm f1.8 glass is going to be unmatched for quite some time with the A7, A7R line. And that's quite frankly the reason that the RX1R exists. The RX1 was a success. It wasn't just a proof of concept. I can't say with complete confidence we'll see an RX2, but I do believe there's a good chance of it. Otherwise, Sony wouldn't have come out with the RX1R. So I think you can see the exceedingly strong resemblance to both the RX1 and, of course, the NEX6, that tilting screen capability, built-in EVF missing from the RX1. Really the Frankenstein love child of these two cameras. No question about it at all in my mind. You're looking at the two cameras, or arguably the NEX7, I would say that, but the NEX6 does have the more modern Wi-Fi capability as well as App Store. Another thing to note, at launch, the App Store is not going to be fully active. Only the Wi-Fi remote control capability is going to be a feature. So that's something I think everyone should keep in mind. But eventually, they said in their press release, at some point in 2014, we'll have full functionality of the Play Memory App Store. In other words, all of those apps you've purchased for your NEX cameras that you're currently enjoying, like time-lapse, noise reduction, those will be available here in the A7 and A7R. Yet another reason that this camera really just defines the best that Sony has to offer. That's not to say that their A-mount cameras that will come out later in 2014 won't be incredible, but when it comes to a compact, mirrorless, interchangeable lens full-frame camera, which pretty much is clearly unmatched, this is the best you're going to find. So really excited about this camera. Great feature set, Wi-Fi, NFC, makes it modern, brings all of the best that Sony has to offer into one package. Like I said, no video overheating issues, at least to my knowledge thus far anymore, which means this can be both an incredible still and video camera for professionals alike, as well as traditional enthusiasts and amateurs. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.